محمد وعلى محمد, please.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
السلام عليكم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. سبح اسم ربك الأعلى الذي خلق فسوى والذي قدر فهدى والذي أخرج المرعى فجعله غثاء أحوى سنقرئك فلا تنسى إلا ما شاء الله إنه يعلم الجهر وما يخفى ونيسرك لليسرى فذكر إن نفعت الذكرى سيذكر من يخشى ويتجنبها الأشقى الذي يصلى النار الكبرى ثم لا يموت فيها ولا يحيا قد أفلح من تزكى وذكر اسم ربه فصلى بل تؤثرون الحياة الدنيا والآخرة خير وأبقى إن هذا لفي الصحف الأولى صحف إبراهيم وموسى آمنت بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم. الفاتحة.
In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, praise the name of your Lord, the Most High, who has created and given form and proper size, who has prescribed laws to live by and given you guidance, and who grows the green and rich pasture, and then makes it dry and sloppy. By small amounts we shall teach you, to declare so that you shall not forget, except as Allah wills, for He knows what is openly known and what is hidden. And we will make it easy for you to follow the simple path. Therefore get guidance in case the guidance will profit. The guidance will be received by those who fear, but it will be avoided by those most unfortunate ones, who will enter the great fire, in which they will neither live nor die, but those who will prosper, who purify themselves, and praise the name of the guardian Lord, and purify their hearts in prayer. But no, you prefer the life of this world, but the hereafter is better, and it lasts longer. And this is in the pages of books of the very, very early revelations, the pages of books of Ibrahim and Musa. So, thank you for that beautiful station. Hajj, brother, let's have a salawat ala Muhammad and ala Muhammad for them, please.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Just want to note that if you have a cell phone, please double check it. Make sure it's on mute, vibrate, silent, or turned off so we don't have any interruptions. We greatly appreciate it. And we want to begin the program tonight by having our beloved Imam here at the ICA give us an enlightening lecture this evening. And let's have a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad for Samat al-Sheikh, Dr. Ibrahim Kazaroni.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
صلوا على محمد وعلى محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله نحمده ونشكره على ما هدانا ونصلي ونسلم على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا بالقاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
We praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for His guidance and blessing, and we are thankful for what we receive from Allah. We also convey our salutation and greeting to the Holy Prophet of Islam and his pure progenies. Sisters and brothers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I pray that you all had a blessed and fruitful night last night. Even little bit of prayer, few salawats are better than nothing. Alhamdulillah. And I also, may Allah accept all your petitions, supplications, and everything else that you have submitted, and make the coming year a much more peaceful and blessed one for all of us and the rest of the world. قال الله العظيم في محكم كتابه أعوذ بالله من الشيطان العليم الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولنبلونكم بشيء من الخوف والجوع ونقص من الأموال والأنفس والثمرات وبشر الصابرين. Surely we will test you with a little fear, hunger, and loss of wealth, and lives, and fruits, and give good tidings to those who remain patient. Last night, being a special night for prayer, I focused primarily on that issue, and I reminded everyone, that one really needs to take extra step and make extra effort during these special nights, because they are critical. And inshallah, I know that technically we could have done better, but within the constraint, each one has done little bit of things, inshallah, Allah accept. The 23rd of Ramadan being the night of destiny is a very unique night in our calendar. For those of you who are going through the motion tonight, because for you 23rd is tomorrow, I ask Allah to help you in this endeavor. And also, as I was trying to explain the role of dua and supplication and petition, I pointed out to a hadith from Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq in which he was literally drawing a formula for prayer, that the prayers to be acceptable in response to one of his disciples, that we pray, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Quran, that you pray and I respond. How is it that we pray quite a lot and we don't get anything? And Imam explains to him a unique procedure that has to be followed for the prayer to be accepted. And once I read the hadith and went back to a number of major prayers that we have in our books, we see that they fall exactly according to that formulation. At the end of the conversation, the question was asked, again this time, Hajjali, regarding, well, how do we explain the presence of calamities, tragedies, pain, etc., in the world, while at the same time we are talking about the general blessing, rahmah, and the specific or conditional blessing, the rahim. By the way, this issue has been addressed by every single monotheistic faith, going back for many millennium, if not centuries, if not millennium. Christianity addresses it, Judaism addresses it, and even others they touch upon it. The issue is defined under what we call theodicy. Theodicy is an attempt to try to understand the relationship between what we call the loving, caring God and the crises that unfold around us in the world on a personal, social, and global level. How can we justify? Every time there is a crisis in the world, theologians bring this theodicy issue up. 9/11, immediately the question was, where was God? After Auschwitz and the Jewish crisis, the Jewish theologians asked the same question, where is God? When the Palestinian issue is going on now, and how the Palestinians are being dealt with in Palestine, the occupied territory, we see the same kind of questions being presented by theologians. So how can we put, if we believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so merciful, so just, then how can we explain the relationship between the pain and the crisis, the calamities, etc., that we have? I want to read a little bit of, just a few short things that to bring to your attention that it's not unique to our community. Theodicy is the answer to the question of why God permits evil. Evil here in its general form. And it's defined as a theological construct that attempts to vindicate God in response to the evidential problem of evil that meditates against the existence of an omnipotence and omnibenevolent life. If we believe that God is all merciful and at the same time all powerful, then how can such a God allow the presence of evil, tragedies, disasters, etc., to exist in the world? That's the question. A theodicy seeks to show it is reasonable to believe in God despite evidence of evil in the world, and offers a framework which can account for why evil exists. When the idea came out, there was a number of theologians, Western theologians, and even philosophers that opted out of the existence of God. They looked at this notion of that there is, on the one hand, we see that there are pain, there are tragedies, there are disasters, calamities, and everything else in the world. And on the other hand, somebody claims that there is a God who's just all powerful. This is real. We see it on a regular basis. The notion that there is such a concept exists is debatable, so we forget about God and we have to deal with the reality as it is. That's one way of explaining it. But historically, if you look at the history, we see that this issue has been debated by a number of other faiths before. Even as far as early Christianity. Around the end of the 1st century and beginning of the 2nd century, we saw people debating theodicy in Christianity. Iranian theodicy is one notion, and I'm going to read it, and the Augustinian theodicy is another one, but they have different ideas. Augustine argues that evil does not exist except as a corruption of good. And since Adam failed and committed the greatest sin, in the evil, let's read it, therefore God did not create evil. Augustinian scholars have argued that God created the world perfectly with no evil or human suffering in it. Evil entered the world through the disobedience of Adam and Eve and the original sin. So, the world was created as perfect, no evil in it. When Adam disobeyed and the original sin took place, then through that original sin, somehow evil became a reality in human. by this token, so long as original sin exists, which is up to the end of the world, we have to accept that pain, crisis, tribulation, disasters, etc., are going to be permanent feature of humanity. That's one way of interpreting. So the cause for it is the original sin. Iranian theodicy, which goes back to around middle of the 2nd century, born in the early 2nd century, expressed the idea which explained the existence of evil as necessary for human development. Now, if the first one, evil, was considered to be abhorrent, that somehow came to exist as part of the original sin, Irenaeus said, no, it is necessary. It should be there because it helps humanity to develop itself through this conflict and the tension that exists, to achieve moral perfection. Irenaeus suggested that humans must have free will. That's to achieve such a free will, human must experience suffering, and God must be at what he calls it epistemic distance of knowledge from humanity. Therefore, evil exists to allow humans to develop as moral agents. So the existence of tragedies and so on are needed in the world from this point of view to support the moral and spiritual development as we go through it. These are few of the ideas. When we come to Islam, early history of Islam certainly came to this kind of debate. We have 3 major theological schools in Islam, 2 in Sunni Islam and 1 as a Shia. Mu'tazila, which was one of the original theological schools developed in the early history of Islam, they claimed that Allah is just, and justice is part and parcel of Allah's character. When it comes to evil, they have their own unique interpretation of it, because this is not a theological debate, I'm going to just briefly touch upon it. Ash'ari, which was the second school of theology, they said, no, we don't believe that God is just. Whatever God does becomes just. Hence, what we see as tragedies and calamities and so on, these are just because God does them. The problem with the Western Christian and Jewish interpretation of it is that, well, first of all, evil is real for them. Secondly, there is no role for human action. And even the most they can explain it is that God is going to reward people who are suffering in this world in the hereafter. When we come to Islam, we see a much more elaborate explanation regarding the existence of what we call or the challenge of evil or theodicy. We go back to the Quran. We see a number of different categories of verses. Number one, the testing that is necessary for the believers. Some verses in the Quran is explicit in telling that we test the believers in a number of shape or form to see whether they are going to be patient and they persevere. The verse that I read at the beginning, وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ, indeed we are going to test the believers with a little bit of fear, hunger, loss of wealth, lives, etc., so that we see who will then you remain patient. It's a test for the believers. وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ حَتَّى نَعْلَمَ الْمُجَاهِدِينَ مِنْكُمْ وَالصَّابِرِينَ. We're going to test you to see those who are really struggle and do jihad as well as to remain patient. So when they see challenges in their life, they do not give up. There is a hadith from Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq that says the followers of Shia, the followers of Ahlul Bayt, can be divided into 3 different types. There are those whom they are Shia and as long as they can benefit from it. Remember hadith from Abdullah Hussein sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, الناس عبيد الدنيا والدين لاحق على ألسنتهم. They will follow the instructions so long as their benefits are protected and preserved. فإذا محسوا بالبلاء قل الديان. Once they are tested, very few people remain faithful. There is another verse in the Holy Quran that says, those who believe, and then remain steadfast, no matter what challenges that they face in their life, تَتَنَزَّلُ عَلَيْهِمُ الْمَلَائِكَةُ. The angels would come and descend. Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq says the same thing. The type 1 are those that they will remain faithful, or at least followers of Ahlul Bayt, so long as it's beneficial. There is an interest. The second group of people are those, if you look at them, they are like a clean sheet of glass. Absolutely clean. But you knock it once and they shatter to pieces. They have no power to resist, to stand still and really go through a struggle. Why am I wearing this? Oh, it's hot and so on, they take it off. You don't need it. Why am I fasting? Why am I praying? Why am I doing this? The notion that all of these are testing to see how we persevere. Believe me, when we look at some of the ahadith and the stories of the early history of Islam, what they went through far was worse what we are going through today. We are afraid of just Islamophobia. Just look at what they suffered. That they were tied to rock that literally was heated in front of the Arabian sun, probably close to 80, 90 degrees. And they were burned by their back to it. And they said, give up Islam, ahad, ahad. They were not going to change. We have become so accustomed to comfort zones that the first struggle, we are going to look for an alternative to get out. So this test is going to be there. The first, second group, the first shattered to pieces. The third, Imam says, is like pure gold. Dip them in fire of testing, and you take them out, they shine even more. The difference between the day of Ashura, you can see this in the statements that come out of the mouth of the 72 or 70 or 50 individuals. That no matter how much pain they had to go through, never shake. So now the first type are the ones that there are calamities. For the believers, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to put them through these calamities and being tested to test them to see how they're going to react. Because وَنَبْلُوَكُمْ بِالشَّرِّ وَالْخَيْرِ فِتْنَةً. Sometimes, even with you, the good things, we test them. There is a verse in the Holy Quran that clearly states, Allah gives to certain people to test them. And Allah removes from certain people to test them. فَأَمَّا الْإِنسَانُ إِذَا مَا ابْتَلَاهُ رَبُّهُ فَأَنْعَمَ. Ni'mah is a blessing that God gives you, is for the test. And then the next verse, if we remove that test from him, still test to see how we react to it. So, because in the same way that in the tashri'i laws, what we call the laws that are come to define religious responsibilities for us, there is pain. You can go to sleep, that's the comfort zone that we want, that's one. Or you can get up early in the morning and offer prayer. You need to struggle. You can go through the summer and not fast, or fasting is requiring you to fast 18, 19 hours in a day as a submission. So, in the tashri'i, sharia point of view, the laws that have come obligating us to do certain things, there are challenges that we have to go through. Hajj, in giving to poor, jihad, etc. In the takwini part, the laws that govern the world, there are again challenges that we have to go through. This is for the believers. So the first type, إن أشد الناس بلاء الأنبياء. Those who are being tested more than anybody else in their life, number one are the That's a clear warning from the divine. That if you have any doubts,
No, I don't know what that was.
so watch it. Oh Lord, I'm not going to say anything. So أشد الناس بلاء الأنبياء. They are the one. There is a hadith from the Holy Prophet ﷺ. There is not a single prophet that had to go through challenges in his life more than I. So bala for the believers are part of their life. ثم الذين يلون, those who follow these anbiya. ثم الأمثل فالأمثال, as you move away, the closer you get to following of anbiya and the guide of messengers, you have to be prepared for the challenges and the calamities that come in as part of your testing. Don't think that all tests are all the calamities are part of testing, because there are others that we create. And Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen says there is a benefit when you go through these testing. It prepares you to become strong in faith. ألا وإن الشجرة البرية, he uses a metaphor. A wild tree that is not being attended to relies on just rain. By itself, the wood is much stronger than the tree that you attend to and provide it with food and water and everything else. When you go through these challenges break you so that you can elevate. This is the Irenaeus understanding of some of the challenges that we face, that are there purely for the believers so that they can improve ethically, morally, spiritually. The second type of the calamities are to bring people back to the right path, to remind them. وَبَلَوْنَاهُمْ بِالْحَسَنَاتِ وَالسَّيِّئَاتِ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْجِعُونَ. It's not to be tested because they want to elevate. No, they have been misguided. You tighten little bit around their life to see whether they realize they can come back. This is the second. The third one is the one that we should be watchful as a consequence of our own action. Those of you who recite Dua Kumayl, اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل منك, brings calamity. Sins have consequences. تغير النعم, تحبس الدعاء, تنزل البلاء, etc. etc. Some of the calamities that we face in our life are due a consequence of our own action. كذلك نبلوهم بما كانوا يفسقون. We give them this bala and calamities in their lives because of what they do. ظهر الفساد في البر والبحر بما كسبت أيدي الناس. Some of the calamities that we have as a direct consequence of our own action. It's not all because you are being tested and to elevate. No. Sin has consequence. Shortcomings are going to lead to some crisis and problems in our life. So what we need to do, if suddenly we realize that our life is in a tangle, no matter how hard we try to get out of one crisis, we get involved in another, then we need to step back and reflect. Are we contributing towards this crisis by our action or not? Are we supposed to do certain things? God has given us all the blessing, all the power, all everything else, and we are not doing what we're supposed to do? And then we are suffering the consequences. Are we supposed to be morally better and ethically more to the right path, but we are not doing it? So don't automatically assume that because we are righteous, this is as part of the trial of being righteous. No, some of the trials are there. But some of them is a reminder to us to come back. There is a hadith from the Holy Prophet ﷺ. He says he went to see one of his disciples. And when he was sick, he went to his house for the food or something. And the Holy Prophet looked at the house and he said, "You have, Alhamdulillah, Allah has blessed you, you have a very comfortable life." The person responded, he said, "Ya Rasulullah, let me inform you that there is another thing in here that I'm being blessed with. I have never been sick in my life." The Holy Prophet began packing himself to go out of the house. He said, "Where are you going?" He said, "Sometimes sickness is necessary to remind us not to get arrogant. If you haven't received it, then I don't want to be around when the punishment comes." So don't think that some of these issues, there is another hadith that if you sin Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this is in Nahj al-Balagha, if you sin and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala constantly gives you with favor, watch it. Suddenly, Allah might decide to change. We have to go through these calamities, either because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to go through it, and it's kind of a kindness. That it's not the issue that to do with the justice and injustice. We have ample proof from the Holy Quran and other hadith that Allah is just. But it's justice that either the Rahman, the expansive blessing and compassion, or Rahim, the limited one or conditional one that sometimes imposes these conditions that we really need to go through. Ask ourselves, when we came from somewhere else over here, what was our financial situation? Nothing. How did we struggle to go through university or school, or our parents did? And hard. Now that we have everything, suddenly we have forgotten that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a role in it. We've forgotten about it. So we may need to be reminded sometimes that, look, I was the one that gave you this. Remember when you were washing the windows, when you were working Peanuts restaurant places or some other places? Remember that? I provided this for you. And now suddenly you have forgotten all about me. So sometimes there is this degree that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends these calamities, challenges in our life so that we can go back. Sometimes these are direct consequences of our own action. We can't ask Allah. There is a hadith that Allah subhanahu, I think I recited this before, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to answer your prayer if you are constantly, and you have challenges in life, if you are constantly sinful, because some of these sins are the consequence, the calamities are the consequence of sins. So, what we see in our life, some of them are necessary as part of what we call greater schema of things Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has. For individuals, we really need to be mindful and check our own deed and action, whether we fall into one category that Allah wants to test us all the time, to see how close we get to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or is it directly the consequence of our own deed and our own action. Let's hope that inshallah the rest of the month we spend in getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is a hadith from Amir which I want to recite specifically to do with this issue. قال عليه السلام لا يقولن أحدكم اللهم إني أعوذ بك من الفتنة. None of you should say, "Oh Allah, I seek your protection from adversity and calamities." Why? Because there is no one who is not involved in one calamity or another. We all, it's part and parcel of this life. But whoever seeks Allah's protection, he should seek it from misguiding calamities. Ask Allah not to put you into a situation where at the end of it you're going to go non-linear. And you go off the right path. Because Allah the Glorified says, "And know you that your wealth, your children are temptations." And its meaning is that He tries people with wealth, progenies, in order to distinguish one who is displeased with his livelihood from one who is happy with what he has as a submission to the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what he's saying, don't ask Allah not to be put in fitna and adversity and calamities, because life on this earth cannot be. We have to live through this dichotomy and challenges. If I'm not sick today, I will not appreciate the health that I get tomorrow. If I'm not poor today, I will not appreciate a little bit of wealth that Allah gives me tomorrow. If I don't have a job today, I will not appreciate the job that comes tomorrow, etc., etc. These tensions must be there so that we develop, we learn, and we appreciate it. When you have health all the time, you really take it for granted as it has to be there. It's when you become sick, نعمتان مجهولتان الصحة والأموال. Amir al-Mu'mineen sallallahu alayhi says that there are two blessings that we really don't appreciate them until we lose them. One is health, one is peace and security. When everything is peaceful and secure, we don't appreciate it. Pick you up and put you into turbulent lifestyle, then you understand what you have. And so is with health. Calamities are part of life. What we need to do is to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not to test us, put us in a situation that the consequence of that is going to be disastrous for us, for our moral and ethical values. May Allah protect all of us from such trial, inshallah. And then those of you, please, sisters and brothers, who are going to celebrate the 23rd tonight, please remember what I said last night. Keep everybody else in your prayer, because prayer for others are much more receptive than prayer for yourself. Let's recite Surah Al-Fatiha for everyone, all the souls, the deceased souls within whether this community and others, and particularly for Marhum Adnan Shaykh and Jawad Shaykh. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Any question? Let's start here and then go back. Excellent question. By looking at our own action. If we assess ourselves, there is a hadith from Imam Musa al-Kazim, حَاسِبُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ قَبْلَ أَن تُحَاسَبُوا. You be the judge. And those who correct their deeds on a regular basis, say at the end of each day, then we can take corrective actions immediately. If we leave it thinking that we are somehow on the right path, then suddenly we realize that we were not. So by reflecting on what we did on a daily basis, just take one day at a time and see what did I do of value, not material, of value that we want to send for the hereafter. as Abu Dhar says, that don't think of actions that fixes and builds this world as meaningful. Think about the actions that you would send in for the hereafter. So if we sit and be judgmental about our own deed, we can deceive others, but we can't deceive ourselves. If my day had hardly anything of worthwhile in it, and then at the same time I'm suffering, that clearly is that's going somewhere else. The reason could be something else. And by the way, the suffering could be anything. The consequence is that the life is not going according to the plan. So it could be family, it could be wealth, it could be health, it could be any kind of things. So you reflect and see, okay, if my life, at least to the best of my knowledge, I have submitted to the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and have done my duty, I haven't, yes, I'm a fallible person, I have committed sins and I immediately corrected myself by tawbah, etc., etc., then there might be that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves this person more than anybody else, or as a person that is more inclined towards the divine attention, you will be tested. This test is to see whether you still remain submitted to the command of Allah. If no, there are other issues involved, as Dua Kumayt says, then the best way of dealing with it is to correct it from there. Heaven?
Yeah, it's sinful. But based on what happened, rather than me, that they sin. So that's what you said.
Well, that was the Christian understanding of it. I never said that that's our understanding. Augustinian theology based primarily rests on the original sin. If you look at the Augustinian theology, Augustine used to claim that original sin corrupted humanity beyond reprieve. And the only salvation or redemption is through Christ. That's his rationalization. So crucifixion, this is the beginning of what we call Christology, how Christians develop their own theological concept. So if original sin corrupts humanity beyond reprieve, you need some unique dramatic action that creates a point for redemption, and that is the crucifixion. And so this is the Christian understanding. From our point of view, inshallah, if one day we start tafsir of the Quran, then we can explain this, that the concept of sin from linguistically, it does not mean exactly what is referred to here, because there are different meanings. Yeah, that's as long as we accept free will for humans, we should make the necessary scope for humans to act. And that act, whatever is the reason for it. Hitler decided for a rationalization of himself to wipe out a certain group of people, because he considered them in the hierarchical structure to somehow inferior. The same mentality is being unpacked in Palestine by the same people who had suffered that kind of mindset. Now, they abused, becoming the abused. They have constructed this unique hierarchical structure in which the Palestinians today occupy the Jewish of the ghettos of, say, 1930s and 40s in Europe. For them. Free will, naturally, once we accept free will, we have to make a scope that sometimes humans behave in a unique manner, which is irrational. How does that fit with the whole tendency of what we call justice of God and omnipotence, etc., etc., is that God, one of the fundamental problem in here is that there is a perception that God micromanages the world. So how can a powerful omnipotence God, etc., allow this to happen? As if it's the remote control, they can zap people that say, no, you shouldn't do this. The notion that God is not micromanaging the world, is macromanaging the world through the existence of causality, the laws of causality. And our action sometimes determine the causal effect. If you cut the trees, mountain, cut them, destroy them, and then tomorrow there is water or tar, washes the surface dirt and brings it down. The consequence is what? Mudslide. A mudslide is what? Thousands of other people down there is going, they are going to die. So do I have to blame God for it? This mindset, the micromanagement of the world, every time there is a disaster, you go back to God. I remember many years ago when the catastrophe happened in Haiti. About, I think, what was 6 or 7 years ago, I was in a class with a professor at Iowa School of Theology. That morning, we debated exactly this, the theology and the relationship between act of man and act of God. And he walked into the class very angry, saying that he was very angry at God. I mean, the language that he used was very rude. Very angry at God. I said, for what? He said, because of what had happened. I said, well, explain to me how the process took place. And once you explain the process, man was responsible for it because of the free will, because of greed, because of etc., capitalism. And then you blame God for it. What's God got to do with this? It's something totally different. So those who say that this act, a human act of free will, sometimes the expression of free will does not make sense. Yes, we have to accept it. But for the person who behaves in a particular manner, he or she has their own rationalization. The consequence is that you destroy thousands and thousands of other people's lives. We go to Africa. Africa, say 200 years ago, literally was the bread or the basket of the rest of the world. As far as fruit, grain, and everything else. Colonialism goes in for the sake of its own short-term benefit, whether it was the British, the French, the German, or the Spanish, or Italian, whatever it is, they literally destroyed the land. Now what do we have? Disaster. Famine. Now you blame them for the famine without tying them to your own deed that you were responsible for. You were the primary cause. The same thing happens in South America, the same thing happens in other places. When you go to the Amazon and you cut down the trees and you get cheap labor and give them cider, poison, to use it against international law, to get gold out of suspension very quickly, and then pour the poison water into the river and kill everything else. The consequence is God. We may have developed technologically somehow, but intellectually, somehow we're going downhill. That if I'm responsible for this creation, if the capitalist system is responsible for it, if the economic system, the socio-economic system is responsible for it, why do we have to blame God for it? What is happening in the Arab world is direct consequence of colonialism and socio-economic system. None of them are prepared to accept it. When you pour a huge amount of weapon and depleted uranium, the consequence is the land becomes toxic. And out of that toxicity, deformation comes out. Southern Iraq now suffering what the Vietnamese were suffering many years ago as a result of a direct consequence of Agent Orange. It was Agent Orange on the Vietnamese, depleted uranium during the 90s on Iraq. The same kind of deformities, the same kind of crisis, the same kind of diseases, etc. Who's responsible for it? Suddenly God decided to change southern part of Iraq? Or after you bombed them into oblivion and used all in prohibited weapons against them? So this notion of free will is a fundamental issue. You really need, you use the free will, give it to a morally sound, sage individual, he or she would use it in a different way. Give it to a corrupt individual, use it in a different way. Give it to Einstein, he used the formula to break atoms, thinking that he would use it for electricity and everything else. Give it to Oppenheimer, the same kind of mindset, and he uses it for what? Creating the first nuclear bomb. The same thing. So this is the crisis that we have. Most of the calamities that we are facing as a direct consequence of our own action. ظهر الفساد في البر والبحر بما كسبت أيدي الناس. And we have to taste some of our own medicine. And suddenly what happens? You create crisis in Syria, try to change the regime, destabilize the whole country, break the whole country to pieces, and then you say, well, we shouldn't allow terrorism to move out of here and come to Europe. Or people shouldn't come out from there to go to Europe. It's a direct consequence of your own action. Or in Iraq, or in other places. We create dysfunctional states, and then the consequence of that, we say, no, we will not accept it. It has nothing to do with us. It's Shia Sunnis. Well, around the end of the Kumail, there is this statement that one is asking Allah, whoever desires evil or wishes evil for me, you deal with it, literally. So instead of, because we don't know who's wishing evil, who's trying to undermine us, who's trying to be bad to us. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that in his scheme of thing to deal with those who are going to wish bad things or evil things for us. It's a general prayer to reward them or prevent them from fulfilling the devious act. Well, the hadith that we have regarding the reappearance of our living Imam says that he will come when the world is full of injustice, and then ملأ الأرض يملأ الأرض قسطا وعدلا كما ملأت جورا. So the world before he comes is full of injustice, and he would turn it around and turn it into a just, equitable, peaceful society. So we can use this as a literally means that the world becomes full of conflict and injustice around the world that humanity needs a Messiah to come and help humanity out of the crisis. So that person comes to change direction. Or we can say that it is metaphorical use of language, that tension exists in the world. As far as when we say full, it's not that, but there are some major crises in the world that could change the destiny of humanity one way or another. And I believe Syria is the beginning of that case. That's why we take a different position against it than other people. Because the hadith mentions powers from the West coming in, Syria and the Levant becoming the central ground for the conflict. Eventual conflict that would lead to what the Christianity calls Armageddon. And at that critical time, you need a leader. Those people who are mujahideen, they stand up to this challenge, and that ultimate spark that needs to turn the table is the appearance of the Imam. By the way, the sermon, this Friday sermon is on Yom al-Quds, because it's the last Friday of the month. So if you don't want to hear political sermon, please don't attend, because I will be. It's outside there, not here. It's the whole theme of it is on Yom al-Quds and what is happening to the Palestinians and the Zionist project in the Middle East. Thank you very much. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. We never got a chance. This question was from you? Oh, thank God. I will keep it as a moment.